There are also new signs that President Biden could face another primary challenger. Minnesota Democratic Congressman Dean Phillips is reportedly meeting with donors in New York City this week who are said to be pushing him to run. Phillips has openly called for a more contested primary, but has also said he wouldn't do anything to undermine Democrats' chances. Let's bring in Niall Stanage, White House columnist for The Hill. Okay, Niall, I know Congressman Phillips is one of the Democrats who has openly raised concerns about President Biden's age. But no offense to him, does he even have the name recognition to compete with the president or more prominent Democrats who've been mentioned as potential candidates, like California Governor Gavin Newsom, Senator Joe Manchin? I mean, what say you?
No, I don't think he does have that name recognition, Marky. I don't think anyone honestly believes Dean Phillips would be a serious challenger for the Democratic nomination. If he were to run, he would be running sort of as an emblem or an avatar of discontent with President Biden among Democratic lawmakers and Democratic voters. The idea being that he would be running to sort of demonstrate that there is this unease with, frankly, the president's age and also poll ratings, which are clearly pretty mediocre still.
Yeah, and I mentioned potentials like Newsom, Manchin. I do have to mention, too, we know that RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson are the Democrats officially running against President Biden. How about them, though? Does Phillips being a sitting congressman and the congressional ties that he has, the deep ones, does that raise his chances against them?
I'm not sure that it does, actually, because I think the framework isn't member of Congress versus not member of Congress. People like RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson represent almost a sort of dissenting or dissident element in the Democratic Party, by which I mean the Democratic Party writ large, Democratic voters. It seems to me that there's likely to be, in a sense, more of an appetite among people who are hesitant about President Biden to vote for those rank outsiders than to vote for someone like Dean Phillips, who's ideologically almost identical to Biden. He's just 26 years younger, which appears to be the main rationale for a possible candidacy.
Yeah, and you bring up hesitancy. I mean, Phillips has appeared hesitant to run. As I mentioned off the top, he's reportedly meeting with potential donors this week in New York. What would ultimately push him to jump in the race officially?
I think if President Biden's poll ratings cratered, that would be one thing. If there was really a sense that grew among Democrats that President Biden could not win re-election. The other thing, I mentioned the age issue a moment ago, if there were more missteps, if there were really serious concerns growing about President Biden's cognitive ability, then I think that might prompt Dean Phillips to enter the race. But other than that, I don't think so.
Yeah. And as we've talked about this with you, polls show that many voters aren't keen on a rematch between President Biden and former President Trump. We've talked a lot about third-party group, No Labels, possibly putting forth a candidate. If Biden and Trump do win their primaries, which is seeming likely, is a well-funded third-party candidate all but certain?
I think, I'm fairly skeptical about the third party thing, particularly the no labels element. I think it's based on a bit of a fallacy, which is if people don't like A or B, they will therefore like C. That's just not true. I mean, I don't see what the constituency is for a Joe Manchin presidential run, for example, other than as a spoiler. Some of the other names that No Labels have thrown out there, I have the same feeling about. Liz Cheney, what's the constituency for her? I do get the point that there is dissatisfaction, but I think that leads to theoretical rather than actual support for a third-party candidate.
Okay. Well, we'll follow the latest that comes from Congressman Phillips this week. Niall Stanage, good to see you as always. Thanks.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.